So here we are. Yes, of course, here we are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, boys and girls. How? Oh, right, I didn't wait long enough. You know what, it won't matter. How are we all doing today? No, this is good, this is good. Why did I have MC? Oh, main character, that's right. So, Birmingham. So what we're going to do today is actually do some writing, it turns out, because for whatever reason, actually, our descendants have a progeny, yes, have been talking about this more than I realized. So yeah, they've managed to, I don't know, get the progenitors to do something for them, and so that's why we're writing now. So given that this is going to be, well, at least this is the second of who knows how many writing streams, we will see how this goes. Yeah. What was the because I didn't actually get a chance to read the request in detail. Can we just give me a overview of what you want me to do today? Yeah. Just a quick one. 2 lines. Write and write well. Okay, well, I can't promise the writing well part, but I can try to write that if that helps. I just realized that this is bad, because for whatever reason. Oh yeah, no. It's because I forgot to do obsidian properly, of course. Does that look good? There's space on the left. And so we will simply pull this up a bit. There we go. Excellent. Done. There we go. Okay, so we're going to write. And what did I say this was going to be? Let me just double check. Or not double check, but redefine. So essentially, we're doing short story, single chapter, right? So multi-part. That is kind of the idea, right? I think it was going to be that I said last time that, you know, if this were a book, each one of the subsequent points would be a part, and then each of those points would be a chapter, and then each of the points after that would be a scene, and then of course, if you go down further, then each of those points would be sort of like a paragraph in the scene, right? So I generally, before we continue, I generally so let's say novel, part, chapter, scene, paragraph, sentence, right? So essentially the idea is you can literally write this out like that, right? So part 2, chapter 2.1, you know, however you want to do this, chapter 2.2, 1. I tend to label my I tend to label my things like this. So this will be 1, right? Part 1, chapter 1.1, 1.2, blah 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 blah. And so if you can outline things down to the sentence level, it becomes really, really simple, right? Yes. So generally, how many chapters do I have in a scene? Let's see. Or how many scenes do I have in a chapter? I have about two to 3 scenes. Each scene has about 5 paragraphs, 500 words, paragraph. Then, of course, here I have about 3, and these are just very roughly how much I have in here, right? So, like, you know, when we get down to the sentences, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't really help. And of course, these are, keep in mind, these are descriptive paragraphs. These are not dialogue, right? When you're writing dialogue, you're not writing big blobs worth of dialogue, because that simply doesn't make much sense. So 100 words. Yeah, so this is generally the layout parts. How many chapters do I have in part 5? 5-ish. 5 chapters, right? So essentially, the idea is to break down your writing into as neat a little bundle as you can, and then work on those bundles individually, right? Like, notice here we have this is I guess the novel. This is the part, chapter, scene. But having said that, right, like, you don't have to go all the way down. This is, if we say we only want a single chapter, then it would be, this would be the chapter, this would be the scene, this would be the paragraph, and this would be the sentence, right? So let me just take all of this. Writing in outline short story mode. We'll put this in. That back. There we go. So each of these, excuse me. No, that's fine. We're doing what we're doing. This is scene. Yes. So right now, all we have are essentially these 3 blobs. So let's make sure that we leave that at the top. There we go, scene, paragraph, sentence. So scene, paragraph, sentence, and then the entire thing forms our short story, right? So what can we do? Well, let's go down further. Decline with the information age, right? By the river decline with blah blah blah. Steam age shall become coal capital of the world. Information age robbed it of lack of skilled workers, meant that information age was how do we say this? Meant that information age was sorry, just like people upstairs are running around. Information age hollowed out town, and then let's say manual mining operations replaced with high-tech options, right? So that would be the first, what is this, first paragraph. And then home to a reactionary lower middle class militia. So then, of course, logically, it makes sense for us to then progress from there. Has it been 8? Oh my god. Has it No, it's all good. We're all good. Just yeah, no, it's all good. So home to a reactionary lower class militia. We say that essentially in this case, because your paragraphs are supposed to link to each other, right? So this decline with information age directly links to this. Let's talk about the lack of education due to chronic underinvestment. Let's talk about how do we say, people who are low opportunity workers. Let's say restive low opportunity workers. One quick second. All good. Okay. What was I saying? Right. Rest of low opportunity workers. Oh, okay. So, oops, that wasn't what I wanted to do. There we go. Oh, when it restored down, it didn't restore properly. Okay, there we go. So instead, we will move this up here. Lack of education due to chronic underinvestment. And you are supposed to do this, right? Like while you're outlining, you just move stuff around that you feel like doesn't work in the correct place. In education and public services, chronic under. We should first talk about at the height of the city, money was wasted on prestige projects, right? And we might actually have to refactor these, right? Because you see these kinds of things, we might have to actually like change the way that we format these paragraphs, because maybe we don't want the decline to be here, if that kind of makes sense. Maybe we want to decline. No, maybe we even want to completely change the way that a paragraph itself, like what the meaning of the paragraph is, right? So let's write out the rest, and then we will see. Lack of education due to chronic underinvestment. And then so low labor mobility, and then let's say how dare you? How dare you? I am not indoctrinating your kids. How can I be indoctrinating your kids? I'm literally talking about things that we see in reality all the time, right? Like we see that there is chronic underinvestment in education public services, and that leads to cities that then decline. Like, I mean, literally, you of all people, you who grew up in Detroit, how dare you say that to me? How dare you? Anyway, that's sort of besides the point. No. Let's not all dogpile. No, that's not necessary. I'm sure my boy was joking. If he wasn't, then we'll have we'll have some strong words with each other afterwards. What was I saying? Low labor mobility and downward spiral. I can't think of a better way of saying that. So when it comes time for us to write the sentence, we'll make it a little bit prettier. What did I want to write here? Oh, actually, that's a good question. How do I then convert this into a novel? Well, it's easy, right? Like, essentially, the best way to then... So once we have an outline in place that we like, it doesn't have to be for the entire novel. It could just simply be for a chapter. If you want to convert it to a novel, really all you do is go chapter 1. Or no, not chapter 1. Because right now we are at the same paragraph sentence level, right? So then what we do is, right now this is a scene. Let's denote it by saying S. Oh, that's definitely not how I want to do it. S, right? So these are all scenes. But literally I can't type for the life of me. Literally what you can do if you want to turn this into a slightly longer piece of work is say, you know what? I don't want this to be a scene. I want this to be a chapter. Right? We're talking now about a chapter on the history of the city. So then by definition, this decline with information age, something that we used to spend a paragraph talking about, now we'll spend an entire scene talking about, right? So and these that used to be part sentences are now paragraphs. And then, of course, by that very quick logic, then we have sentence 1, 2, 3, right? Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, exactly. Like it's well, that is sort of the point. So, and actually, I'll be honest, this is how I used to write quite a bit. When I used to do a lot more creative writing, it would just be like, you start with 3 lines worth of, and this is a way to write actually, just in case like it doesn't feel like it. But this is called outlining. But there are tons of ways of getting this kind of structure onto paper. There's one. Was it called the snowflake method? Just double check on that. Snowflake template. Yeah. Essentially, snowflake is you write a single card and then you replace that card with 3 cards. Each of them talks about one particular thing, and then each time you replace a single card with 3 cards, and so very quickly, you multiply by 3 every time, right? So it's an exponent. Well, it's an exponential, and so yeah. So if you do this like 4 or 5 times, that's 3 to the power 5. What is that? That is 27 is 3, 90, 81 is 4, 240, 243. Am I right? I can't do mental math. 3 times 3 times 327 times 381, 243. Yeah, I'm right. Good. Yes, I can send you some resources afterwards. Yes, you too. I'll send it to the entire progeny group. Don't worry about it. It's not important. Yeah. So I personally prefer outlining because it is the shall we say cheapest method of doing this, because essentially what you're saying then like you can do this in Notepad, right? Like there's nothing special about this particular, like you can use what am I using? I'm using Obsidian. You can use Obsidian, but like it's not that different from simply using Notepad. The only thing that might be interesting is what I do here. I can hold Alt and move this up and down, and like that means that you can do this, right? Like you can move entire scenes back and forth. You can collapse something and then just move. Oh, I don't think you can do that. Give me 1 second. Oh no, so you can't do that, but that's fine. I will probably submit a bug report, because you should be able to do that. Like if this is collapsed, then you should be allowed to move the entire thing, right? Oh, you can. Okay. But you have to highlight it as opposed to just take the line? No? Yeah. You have to highlight it as opposed to... Yeah, okay. Anyway, not important. Yes, yeah, we're getting off topic. So we're getting nowhere today. That's right. The rest of low opportunity workers, inward turn as innovation fights over smaller pie, hollowing out of, let's say, social security, and so obviously you get then out of that you get a reactionary lower class, which then not sticking tongue out face, which then radicalizes the lower middle class. Right, so this is sort of our introduction to the entire thing. This is playing with the setting, right? Again and again, this is let me add it into the end. So this is introduction, setting the setting. There we go. Right, so then this is plot 1, plot 2, and plot 3, right? So no conclusion. Conclusions. So to me personally, conclusions in fictional works tend to be really short. They are either really short or they take up 90% of the book. At least how I would write it, because to me a conclusion is either something, you go on this grand adventure and then you're done the adventure, and then everything else afterwards is boring comparatively to before, right? Like one piece of writing advice that people don't get enough is this. Let me put it up. Is this your character's most interesting experience? If not, why are you not writing about that? Right? And I think intuitively it makes sense that this is something that gets this is the kind of advice that gets given a lot, because you see, even just now, right, we spent so much time talking about the introduction, about the setting, that we haven't actually talked about the most interesting part of the experience, which is the Stardust, the discovery of, this Deus Ex Machina, the civil unrest that follows, and then the rebirth. And these are technically the more interesting parts of this story. And yet, I was spending so much time simply doing the setting, right? Simply doing the setting. And so that's why I say a setting, a conclusion either exists in a very short, let's say conclusion, let's call that 3 sentences, right? Like or 1 paragraph, right? That's why I say either the conclusion is really short, or the conclusion is the most interesting part of the story or the characters' lives, and then you spend most of the time talking about the conclusion. You talk about the consequences of some fundamental change that has happened within the system, right? And you could re outline this to do that. You could re-outline this to say, you have a single piece for the setting again, but then you just spend a couple paragraphs talking about how that society went through a huge amount of upheaval, and then you spend the rest of the plot points talking about the downstream effects of that upheaval, right? You talk about, for example, the change in political entity. You talk about the change in suffrage, etc., that kind of stuff, right? Like, does that make sense? Yeah, we can outline that. Yes, we can outline. Let me write this down. Outline, conclusion focused. Let me bring this up, and so we're gonna take this. Actually, we're gonna open thematic here, and then we're going to open conclusion here. There we go. And so this idea, I'm not gonna call it Birmingham. Actually, isn't there? hold on. I feel like there's a Birmingham, Alabama. There is a Birmingham, Alabama. It's got 200,000 people. Wow, okay. Alabama's most populous county. Oh, it's a county. Jefferson County, yes. Alabama's second most populous city after Huntsville. Can you imagine if your second most popular city has only got 200,000 people? Oof. Ooh, that is such a different concept. I'm getting distracted. Yes, let's move back to this. So if we want to do this in a conclusion focused way, so let's say we will then growth, regeneration, stardust, civil unrest, rebirth, and then we want to do conclusions. Ooh. Formation of nativists. So then essentially we would say we would leave basically all of those, right? Maybe we'll keep one. Requires high reward. Locals can only do menial labor, so delete these. Influx of middle class, demoted to manual labor, and is resentful of that. So essentially, you see, we have essentially cut the, well, to me. So it depends on what you would find interesting, right? Yeah. So one quick second. So what was I saying? Right. Completely lost my train of thought. Oh, sorry. Anyway. No, it's all good. Thank you though, thank you. So then now that we have this, right, we suddenly we have 2 to 3 scenes left after this that we can use. So perhaps we'll dedicate a scene to new politics. We'll dedicate a scene to renew the social services, social contract. Let's do that, and then oop, that was the wrong button to press. That's okay. It's down, and then we'll dedicate a scene to focus on education, right? So then suddenly this conclusion, of course, 3 sentences. So then now that we have this, you can see how different this story is compared to before, right? We talked about the decline, we talk really quickly about the unrest that's happening, but then we spend most of the story talking about how the city sort of brought itself out of the decline. So it depends, it very much depends on what audience you're writing to, what kind of issues you want to talk about, right? Because it's very clear that this is much more about social unrest, whereas this is much more about the solution to the social unrest. And I'm moving my hands around like a crazy person, but obviously none of you can see that, but that's fine. Oh yeah, you're still out there. Okay, well, so some of you can see that. Some of you that are at the office, but that's sort of completely irrelevant. The point is, what I'm saying is that when you are doing this kind of writing, you are the one in control, so you have to know ahead of time how you want to write this, right? Like, well, I mean, have to is a strong word, but if you're writing this for marks, if you're writing this to a specific criteria, right? Like say, and this isn't solely for fictional work either. If you want to write nonfiction, you can do so with this kind of outline as well, right? Absolutely, 100%. Actually, nonfiction is much easier in an outline than fiction is, simply because nonfiction, when you write nonfiction, you tend to have the end goal already very clearly in mind, whereas you can see as we were going about this, right? Like we had, let's see, we had a timeline progression as well, right? So the same type of same type of question or the same type of content can be told in many different ways. That's really all I wanted to say. Yes. Any. Unfortunately, we're done. Yes. Do we have any questions? I'm sure we. Yes. Oh, that's a lot of questions. So I will answer one from the progeny group, one from the progenitor group, and then I'll actually answer the progeny questions in the Discord afterwards. But yeah. So one of the questions was how would I conclude something like this? And in this case, I would probably say something along like your conclusion is really your summary, but it also is think of it as the lights dimming on a story, right? Like you could end on a cliffhanger, absolutely, if that is the point of this. And I would probably argue that my conclusion would be different in all three of these cases. Right here, I would talk about the future. Here, I would talk about the renewed politics, probably. And here, I would talk about, this is thematic. Here, I would probably talk about the rise of not rise. Well, what is the overarching theme? Let's see, start with regrowth and rejuvenation, right? So here we would talk about probably the macroeconomics, which, happens to be down here. Future of the city. Like, it is a summary. Oh yeah, no, you're right. The conclusion should be a summary, but the summary doesn't itself necessarily have to restate what happened up here, right? Because if they want to know what happened up here, they can literally go back and read it. And of course, remember, this is a 3-sentence conclusion, right? So that's a little bit different than if you had an entire chapter dedicated to it. Yeah. So when you have these short conclusions, like, yes, I appreciate that, these are technically the conclusions, and so that's why you still have to sum it up, right? You talk about, and therefore because of these because of the new politics, the social coherence regenerated, blah blah, and then the city was fine, or something like that. And here you might say, and over the next 50 years, the city has once again regained its former glory because blah blah. And here you might say, like fundamental macroeconomic factors, which led the city to decline, also gave it a were also necessary for it to regrow, something along those lines, right? So essentially, you would tailor it based on how you wrote and how you outlined the story above. Yes. And now from the progenitors, can you guys have some like more interesting questions? I'll answer the question asked by our old lady, not old lady, our boy whose name ends in AC. When am I going to give a macroeconomic lecture? Never, obviously, because I'm not a macroeconomics expert, and so I would not want to sort of give out bad information, right? That would be bad of me. I think that wouldn't be fair to both myself and to all of our viewers. If, however, there are people with questions about macroeconomics, that I am happy to sort of give my view on it, because compared to sort of the more shall we say deterministic sciences, the economics is very much something that is, shall we say, there's the reason why our understanding of macroeconomics is not as good as something like quantum physics is because it's the same reason why our understanding of psychiatry and psychology is not as good as something like quantum physics, because we're missing that middle bit of how the physical quantum mechanical system in the brain generates the actions and behavior of a human, right? So we know a lot about the biochemistry. We know a lot about the quantum mechanics that underlines the biochemistry. What we have trouble with in this day and age is translating that biochemistry to macro behavior. And anyone who studies macro human behavior but does not study both the biochemical underlying factors that make up the brain, and don't also then study sort of the development of the brain, are simply unable to arrive at the truth. It would be like studying a car by measuring all of its outsides, right? Like you can measure external dimensions, you can measure 0 to 60 times, you can do specific engine outputs even, but if you don't understand how the mechanics work, it is really, really difficult to understand how that car works, right? So it's the same kind of issue, and we are in both economics and psychiatry excuse me, missing that middle layer. Anyway, done for today. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for laughing at me, of course, as always. Thank you for being concerned about my voice, yes. But that I have unfortunately no control over, right? Because I talk so much every day. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you again very much. Please download Firefox, please don't do Chrome, and I shall see all of you tomorrow, where fingers crossed we actually get to do some music this time. Thank you, bye now.